Danny and I have been liberated from the mad round of pink alcohol since November 11th, 2021. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all today and share a little bit of my story with you all. I'm so very honored to be up here, and because I truly do believe that recovery is for everyone. No one has ever denied it. No matter what your struggle is, whether that be with drugs, alcohol, depression, anxiety, food, gambling, sex, self-image, social media, self-harm, the list could go on and on. These addictions, these obsessions, these false ways we may view of ourselves can affect anyone. From my understanding, I have an illness, a disease called alcoholism,
Yes.
and it affects every race, social class, and occupational field. Alcoholism and addiction does not discriminate. The disease does not care. It only cares about breaking me down to a place so dark and so humiliating and so lonely. It takes me to a point where I push everyone away. And sooner than later, I got to a place where my life was unimaginable. I couldn't even imagine my life with or without alcohol. My story isn't anything out of the ordinary, but more likely someone who is just as sick and suffering as much as I was will be able to relate to it if they are willing to hear.
Yes.
I've been told if you listen closely and listen to what you need to hear, you will be able to hear it. Try and find something relatable that you can take away from this, where you can get the help you need, or guide and support someone to a place where they can find the spiritual tools that I've been given so freely. This time last year, I was so far from control of my own life. As a matter of fact, in a few weeks, I'd be spending the first of 2 visits in a psych ward at the hospital. My life was crumbling so fast in front of my eyes that none of it even seemed real to me anymore. I just kept doing what I wanted, when I wanted, and how I wanted, with no regard to the people I was pushing away. But before I get into all that, let me start quickly a little bit from the beginning. I was raised in a loving home with both my mom and dad and my older sister. I grew up in Bordentown, New Jersey till the age of 14, until my dad accepted a job which took us to Cincinnati, Ohio. My dad worked hard to provide for our family, and my mom worked hard to keep everything in check and in order at the home front. In our house, there was always alcohol, but nothing to be concerned about. But there was always that evening beverage that my parents would enjoy. As a kid, I used to romanticize about this beverage. Every once in a while, my mom and dad would allow me a sip. And oh boy, I never did turn my nose up to that glorious opportunity. Although that one sip would not do anything to bring me to oblivion yet, that sip would ferment in my mind for quite some time. I would always tell myself, I can't wait till I'm old enough to buy this stuff. Every now and then I would catch myself sipping from the leftovers in my dad's melted iced gin martini. This is how I know and believe that I was born an alcoholic. Looking for the opportunity just to get that sip. And don't even get me started on how excited I was when I received First Communion in the Catholic Church, because I got to sip that fine Jesus wine. I love this drink even before it even did anything for me. I love the idea of it, the taste of it, the cool fancy bottles it came in. It wasn't until I was in the 6th grade and a friend and I helped ourselves to one of his dad's beers. We sat in his parents' garage and split that beer as sophisticatedly as we knew how. We relished in the glory of our secret and memory. One of my first real memories of catching a slight feeling of euphoria from this drink. As time went on, I got older. I did what most kids do as they enter high school. I experimented with drugs and alcohol, and I found great pleasure in how much I could consume and how quickly I could do it. I wouldn't say there was anything too alarming about what I was doing, because everyone was doing it, right? I'd go weeks, even months at a time without touching anything. There was no dependence on the alcohol yet. Fast forward to my 20s, I was legal. Finally, I could buy alcohol. This is what being an adult meant. Going to work, getting off, having a few to wind down. They say I had arrived. I now question myself early on with my relationship with alcohol. When I was renting a studio in Buffalo, New York, maybe $80 to my name, barely any food in the fridge or freezer. But I did have a 30-pack of cheap Canadian beer. Life was seemingly okay, though. Although I had entertained that question about myself and alcohol, I didn't feed into it much longer. My life was beginning to take shape in my early 20s. I went to college, got married, had a daughter. All during this time, alcohol was my solution to the stressors of life. It was my way to escape from reality for a few hours at the end of a long day. I deserved those drinks. They symbolized maturity. They symbolized responsibility. Soon, I began to sneak drinks throughout the day, have vodka in the morning instead of coffee, getting tight at always the wrong times, stealing money from my wife. I can't pinpoint when I crossed that invisible line of full-blown alcoholic, but all I know is I was on a vicious cycle. Before I knew it, it was 4 to 6 pints of vodka a day to hold me over until I went to bed. I sobered up for about 2 years when I was 27, but I still kept that reservation in my head to drink again one day, thinking that a little bit of time being dry would mean I could handle my alcohol like a normal person. I knew nothing about my disease then, and guess what? Shocker, I drank again. By this time, my wife and I moved ourselves and our 2 children down to Henry County, Virginia. Things got dark really quickly. Drinking off and on, trying to control it, I finally got caught drunk again. But this time, my wife realized how insane and scary it was becoming. I was drunk off hand sanitizer, and a lot of it. Hungover for 2 days straight, I swore never to drink again. Next thing I knew, I was drinking again, not knowing why I did it. I was off on a road to self-destruction, and I would destroy you, anything you loved, if you got in my way. I would wake early in the morning with fear and anxiety, sick to my stomach, shaking uncontrollably. I needed a drink to get the morning started. I was lucky if I could find enough change just to buy a pint. I was even luckier if I could stomach that first drink. And if I couldn't, no worries, I'd make another one and make it even stronger. Saying all this out loud now really does just sound purely insane. And I ask myself why. Because of the disease. When I consume alcohol of any kind, hand sanitizer included, I activate the allergy where my body craves alcohol, and my mind is obsessed with the idea of it. All my thinkings and actions are controlled by alcohol. But don't get me wrong, I'm not making this up as an excuse for all the harm and pain I had caused people in the way of my self-destruction. My last go-around with alcohol was only for 3 months, but the amount of damage and the consequences that came from this were a lifetime that I was pushing away. After being in the psych ward twice for suicidal thoughts, I would get out and do it again, trying to control my drinking, and I would crash and burn harder and harder every time. I was on the insane merry-go-round of a vicious cycle. My wife had finally had enough. I couldn't control myself, and she was exhausted trying to save me. I went down to South Carolina to be with my parents. I was too out of control, too unstable to be around my wife and kids. And of course, nothing changed when I went down to my parents. Honestly, things only got worse. My mom caught me drinking a few times while I was staying there. I acted like a child when they took my keys away. I physically assaulted my father when he was trying to help me. The disease of alcoholism was winning. The only thing that was going through my head was, I can't love myself, so I'll make sure everyone else can't love me. I can't really recall how much about my time when I was down there in South Carolina. Can't really recall too much at all. But all I know is I had 2 loving parents and a loving wife who were communicating with one another, trying to figure out the best way for me to get help. Somehow, they set up appointments for me at Piedmont Community Services. When it was time for me to head back to Virginia, 2 things crossed my mind. I could either run away and live it out to the bitter end, or I could finally accept the help that I was getting. I thank a power greater than myself for bringing me back up this way. Of course, when I came back to Virginia, I was not allowed to be in my house or to see my children for good reasoning. I stayed 3 nights in a hotel waiting to get into a sober living house. I continued to drink uncontrollably. And when they saw how bad I was struggling, they told me plain and clearly, you're going to detox. Oh man, fear and anger, confusion all swarmed my head. This was not part of the plan. I did not want to be locked up again like I was when I was in the psych ward. Well, I finally made it to Mount Regis Rehab Center, clocking in at a .37 alcohol content. And that was the last time I would ever blow numbers. And for the first time in a long time, I really had arrived. I arrived to the first day of existence, clean and sober, or ready to get clean and sober, you know. By the grace and power greater than myself, I heard something while I was there, something that I wanted. I heard a 12-step fellowship tell me I never had to drink again. I was told I could live happy, joyous, and free. I surrendered that second night at Mount Regis and joined the 12-step fellowship. Something felt different this time. I couldn't keep doing it anymore. I was broken and beaten more than I realized. As I sobered up, I woke up on the 4th day in detox and realized how much damage and destruction I had caused. It was all flowing in from every direction. It was like watching the breaking news on TV after a huge natural disaster has struck, and all you have left to look at is ground zero. I realized that alcohol gave me wings, but it took away my sky. Before I left detox, I informed 2 nurses that I still had alcohol in my car. Knowing the disease was sitting and waiting to pounce on me like a lion stalking its prey, one of the nurses and I went outside. We opened those 2 containers that had alcohol in it and dumped it out. It was that moment I will never forget. A sense of new freedom began to flow through me. Yes. I left detox after being there for a week and went back to Martinsville to move into a recovery house where I spent the next 7 months of my life. Yeah. Living in Sober Living House, I was introduced to what recovery actually was and what recovery wasn't. Before, when I thought I was in recovery, I was only being abstinent from alcohol. My newfound family taught me how to live without alcohol. While living in recovery house, I met so many people who were going through the same struggles I was going through. Not only was I living with some of these people, but I was also seeing a lot of the other residents from the other houses at IOP, recovery night 3 times a week, 12-step meetings. We had our own little community that I didn't even realize was a worldwide network. We alcoholics and addicts share something special that connects us in an amazing and powerful way. We eat and breathe and slept recovery. These people taught me how to love myself once again. I remember one night at recovery night, we did an exercise on self-affirmations. We individually got up in front of the group, sat in front of the mirror, and said 3 things about ourselves that we love. And I remember mine. Danny, you are kind, you are gentle, and you are beautiful. I still practice my affirmations almost daily. I was immediately hooked on this new way of living. I never knew life could be so fun without relying on alcohol. Today, if I finish out these 24 hours, I'll be 296 days clean and sober. What a wonderful thing. What a wonderful thing. Every morning I wake up, I'm given a chance and a choice. A chance to live my program to the best of my ability, and a choice on whether I pick up that first drink because that's the only choice I'll ever have. Today I choose to stay connected to my network, attend meetings, go to therapy, go to group therapy, and work steps, and most importantly, stay in conscious contact with the higher power of my understanding. I choose to stay in the solution one day at a time. One of the greatest things I have gained from being in recovery is awareness. To be able to be aware of the areas of me I know I need to work on. Some people call these character defects. It is so cool to be able to point out through the help of my higher power where I can be straying away from my program. Am I being selfish in this situation? Am I humbling myself? Or am I practicing humility? Because not only do I have a drinking problem, but I have a thinking problem. This is where I use my step work to help me see myself in situations for what they really are. I thank God for today. Us alcoholics and addicts are truly walking miracles. If we become willing to take the action and win our life back. Life is too beautiful and precious to go back out there and live the way I did. I'd be lying to you all today if I said my life has been smooth and easy since getting sober. But be mindful, I do practice a program of rigorous honesty, so I can't tell you it has been. I'm learning and relearning each day how to navigate myself through this thing called life. Life shows up, things happen, and I can't avoid certain situations. I can't go around numbing people, places, and things anymore. I learn one day at a time to go headfirst into uncomfortable situations, stressing responsibilities, and allowing the people I have hurt to heal with their valid emotions and trauma for what I had caused them. Again, when I say I believe recovery is for all, I mean it. As alcoholics and addicts, we have to go back into our relationships meekly and understand that our loved ones, our friends, deserve recovery for what they had experienced watching their loved ones slowly kill themselves. I love my wife so much, Mary Grace, and I couldn't ask for a better woman to grow up with. And having that awareness and knowing that she deserves just as much recovery and just as much support as I was freely given. Remember, no one is denied recovery. I hope today my story could help or stand out to at least one person. I know when I was struggling, all I needed to do was hear Laverne's story, or Leon's story, or CJ's story. Knowing that there is hope, there is help out there. All you have to do is become willing to try something new. Take suggestions, get phone numbers, go to meetings, don't drink or use. I am a grateful alcoholic because without all the destruction and misery I was living in, I wouldn't know how wonderful life could be. I wouldn't know that I am an amazing person and I am worthy of self-love. Recovery is such a beautiful way of life, and it is so achievable, but you have to do the work. I am excited for the next 24 hours. I don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, but what I do know is I will wake up and I will pray to my higher power, and I will say, guide me, steer me, make me useful, and keep me sober today. After that, I will choose not to drink just for those 24 hours, and I'll go about my day putting my program into action with all my affairs. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you for helping me stay sober today. And remember, life is too amazing to be living in the dark. Take action, become willing, seek help. It's okay not to be okay. Talk to somebody. I love you.